Kaye, thank you for coming. Before we get to the question, maybe you'll start by...
So the purpose of the report is to identify the existing legal framework for protection of sources, I would say source confidentiality, if we want to be a little bit more specific, and protection of whistleblowers, solely to those who define them. So the confidentiality of sources is actually pretty widely protected as a matter of law, both statutory law and constitutional law around the world. The problem is generally not the protection, as a matter of a piece of paper and a legal framework. It's that protection is not always effective. And
Happy to do it this way. Thanks a lot. Very glad you're here. Matthew Lee, Inner City Press.
Governments often go around legal requirements in order to identify sources by using surveillance technologies, metadata analysis, and that kind of approach. And that's of course problematic as a matter of the rule of law.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you before.
All too often, even when you have protection of source confidentiality, you have a narrow definition of journalist, right? So it's normally the journalist who stands up for the source and protects that person's confidentiality. And so there are bloggers, there are citizen journalists, there are non-governmental organizations that really perform a kind of public watchdog role, to use the phrase from the European Court of Human Rights, that traditional journalists have done for decades. So I think that the narrow definition of journalism can be a problem, and we should have a broader definition here. Just within the last few months, states very often fail to take into account the public interest value of information when assessing the harm done to a legitimate interest by any particular disclosure. And the report makes the argument that any assessment of whistleblower protection should assess the public interest with respect to the potential harm, and that governments that seek to avoid protecting whistleblowers should really be identifying specific harm to a legitimately protected interest.